Some people come into our lives like a spark, lighting up the room. They draw you in with promises of warmth, with moments that feel so genuine. And before you know it, you've opened your heart and let them in. But it's only after you've bared the most vulnerable parts of yourself that you realize their spark was never meant to last. It was only there to ignite what they needed from you, leaving behind nothing but the cold ashes of what could have been. And as you sift through those ashes, you're left to wonder, how do you cope when the person you trusted the most reveals that they were only ever there for themselves? Hi, I'm Dev.
And I'm Cam.
And you're listening to Criminalish, a true crime podcast where two best friends trade stories ranging from the wild and wacky to the downright messed up. So today, I will be telling Cam about the murder of Taylor Wright, which took place in Pensacola, Florida. Have you heard of this case before, Cam?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. I think this case is going to be very, very interesting from multiple different perspectives based on who all our players are. But before we get into today's case, what you drinking, friend?
So I am drinking a Cabernet Sauvignon from the Club Series Reserve, which I figured out, I think is just highlighting different baseball teams. So this week's is the Kansas City Royals. I think the last time I had one from the Milwaukee Brewers. So yeah, that is what I'm drinking tonight. What about you?
Okay. That sounds fancy. I like it.
$8 fancy.
Shh. Look, that's fancy to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But I am back with an oldie but goodie, and maybe y'all are sick of it, but I am not. I got a brown sugar boba milk tea from my favorite boba place.
I'm not sick of it at all.
Clearly, I'm not either. So to get into today's case, Taylor Wright was born in 1984 in South Carolina, and she was described as incredibly kind, outgoing, and the type of person who would give you the shirt off of her back if you needed it. Her girlfriend Cassandra also described her as someone who was full of life, full of energy, and had, quote, great big ideas, end quote. Not just for herself, but also for her family. Now, unfortunately, I don't know much about Taylor's personal life prior to this incident, but I do know that at some point she moves to North Carolina and becomes a police officer. I also know that she eventually marries a man named Jeff Wright in the mid-2000s. And the couple would later have a child together in 2009. And I also know that shortly after this child was born, the relationship between Taylor and Jeff begins to fall apart. And the couple would actually go through an extremely ugly divorce that was finalized presumably in 2015 or 2016. I do not know the exact date of their divorce. But I do know that despite their divorce being finalized, they were still actively fighting each other in court over custody of their child in 2017. Now, Jeff maintained primary custody of their child, which meant that Taylor was responsible for paying him child support. I do not know the specific circumstances as to why Jeff had primary custody of the child, and as I've spoken about before on this podcast, didn't find it relevant to look too deeply into their personal lives in relation to this case. But the part that is relevant is that Jeff and Taylor had settled down in a house in North Carolina, and they had combined their finances. And according to friends of Taylor, she did not feel like the split of the settlement was fair or equal from the divorce. And at some point, while the divorce was still pending, against a court order, Taylor went and withdrew $100,000 out of the joint checking account between herself and Jeff, which was money that she was not at all entitled to take. In addition to this, during the divorce proceedings, Taylor decides that she needs a change of scenery and decides to move to Pensacola, Florida, to begin her new life. Taylor also makes a change of career and decides to become a private investigator while in Florida. And by all accounts, this move was great for Taylor. She was able to make new friends and became settled in the community quite easily. And shortly after moving to Pensacola, she also began a relationship with a woman named Cassandra. Now, Cassandra worked as a public school administrator, and she and Taylor's relationship reportedly moved very quickly. And Taylor and Cassandra were living with each other very shortly after they started dating. However, it never really seemed like Taylor fully moved into Cassandra's house, as it has also been reported that most of her belongings remained in a moving trailer on Cassandra's property.
Was this like a space issue? Was it maybe a psychological thing where it's like, once I move all this stuff out, it's really done?
I don't really know, girl. To me, it's giving, I don't know if I want to jump into this new relationship head on after I just got divorced. That's what it's sounding like to me. That's what the apprehension seems to be to me.
Yeah. And do we know if this was Taylor's first time in a relationship with a woman?
I do not know 100%. Some people have reported that this was her first relationship, but I don't know that to be fact.
Got it. And the only reason I ask is I think that would also be another level, another layer of newness that could have made Taylor a little bit more hesitant to complete that move. But all that being said, moving in and sharing space with someone, especially when you have a child, is still a big leap, even if you haven't moved all your stuff in.
Completely agree, but I do think it is slightly easier in Taylor's case as she didn't have primary custody of her child. So her child also wasn't living with her. She doesn't really need to have that extra layer of precaution since her child was not living with her. But by all accounts, this relationship seems to be quite lovely and they're quite happy together. That is until Taylor actually cheats on Cassandra in late July of 2017. And as you can imagine, this puts a major strain on the relationship, as not only was Taylor cheating on Cassandra, Cassandra learns that Taylor also started using cocaine. And of course, Cassandra had a big problem with that.
Yeah, because for one, Cassandra is a public school administrator. And I'm sure even if she's not being drug tested, if she were ever connected to any drug type of arrest, she could lose her job. For two, cocaine is addictive. For three, cocaine is expensive.
Come on now.
And for four, that can get you into some sticky situations in terms of how addicted you get and who you're getting it from. And then on top of all that, Taylor cheated on her. So it really does seem like this is putting a wrench in their relationship because it has completely broken Cassandra's trust. And it also seems like Taylor's changed a lot from the person she was when she and Cassandra first started dating.
Absolutely. Cassandra herself has said that she felt so betrayed by finding out all this information. But for reasons I do not know, this incident did not split Cassandra and Taylor up. They did decide to try to work it out and continue seeing one another. But as Taylor is attempting to settle into her new life and mend the relationship that she has fractured with Cassandra, she still has several issues from her previous life looming over her head. One, she was actively still fighting a case against her ex-husband and was still having to travel to North Carolina for court dates. And two, by this point, the court had finally gotten word that Taylor took $100,000 out of the joint bank account against the court's order. And of course, this was reported by Jeff's attorney. And court records show that the judge ordered Taylor to return that money to the joint bank account on top of her continuing to pay child support to Jeff. And the judge further stated that the money would remain in that bank account and neither party would have access to it until the judge gave an official order of how that money was going to be distributed between the couple. Because Jeff's attorney was basically saying that Taylor's not entitled to any of that money in the joint account, while Taylor's attorney is saying that she's entitled to some portion of the money in the bank account.
I'm just trying to figure out how she thought no one would notice.
Right. Right. What was the plan here, girly? What was the plan?
Like 10K, maybe, depending on how much is in the account. 5K, 1K. But 100K? Even if there's $1 million in the account, 100K is very noticeable.
Girl, I can tell you exactly how much was in that bank account. It was $251,436.06.
So she took almost half.
Yes.
And my other question is, do we know how long she had been using cocaine and also what her level of use was? Like, was it an occasional thing or was she inching towards addiction?
I do not know her exact usage level, but it is my opinion that if you're using enough to get caught, you're not really using it casually, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And of course, that is my personal opinion. I do not know exactly what Taylor's use was like, but that is my personal opinion. So the judge orders Taylor to have all $100,000 back into the joint checking account by September 7th, 2017. However, Taylor's attorney explains to the judge that that wouldn't be enough time for her to move all of the money back into the bank account for reasons that I'll explain later. And the judge gives her an extension, and the final date is set for September 12th, 2017. Now, this is important because not only was Taylor ordered to return all of this money, if she did not return all of this money, Taylor was going to go to jail for contempt of court. For those who don't know, contempt of court is an act of disobedience or disrespect towards a judicial branch of government or interference with its orderly process. It is an offense against a court of justice or a person whom judicial functions of sovereignty have been delegated, i.e., a judge. And this disobedience or disrespect of court can land you in jail for as little as a day or as long as 2 years. And the maximum sentence for contempt of court varies from state to state, as well as if it is criminal contempt of court, meaning that you disrespected the judge in their face. So yeah, there's a lot riding on Taylor's ability to put all of this money that is not hers back into the bank account by September 12th. So it has been reported that Taylor was freaked the hell out about going to jail. So she fully intended to return this money to the bank account and keep herself out of jail. So now we arrive to the day of September 12th, 2017. And when it's time for Taylor's case to begin, she's not there. Taylor doesn't show up for court, and she has not had any contact with her attorney. And after cross-referencing with some of her friends and her significant other, people realize that not only did she not show up to court, Taylor hasn't been seen in the last 72 hours. And it is at this moment that Taylor's significant other, Cassandra, goes and reports her missing. And when Cassandra goes to report Taylor missing, reportedly, nothing was really done about this other than her filling out the report. The police, according to Cassandra, did not seem initially concerned about Taylor going missing. And this seems to be because Cassandra told officers that she and Taylor were in an argument when Taylor left the home and seemingly never came back. So it seems that the police just thought that this was some kind of domestic dispute and did not take initial steps to go and find Taylor immediately. So the following day, Cassandra is still calling Taylor and is calling Taylor's friends and trying to figure out what's going on. And unfortunately, Cassandra is actually starting to get angry at Taylor for not responding to her calls and not getting back to her, because Cassandra and Taylor's relationship had admittedly been through a rough patch since the cheating incident. And with Taylor's drug use also adding that extra layer of frustration, it really just seems like Cassandra was over it. However, 3 days after that, on September 14th, 2017, Cassandra goes back to the police and she has calmed down and she's thought it through. And now she's really scared that Taylor is actually missing and nobody has seen her. And this is especially concerning because Taylor stayed in constant communication with most people that knew her, but especially with her ex-husband and her child. And reportedly, Jeff nor her child had heard anything from her in almost a week. And the same goes for everybody else in her circle. And they quickly realized that though some people had heard from Taylor, nobody had seen her since September 7th, 2017, which was the first day she was supposed to make sure the money ended up back in the joint bank account.
I can only imagine how Cassandra was feeling, especially since she was mad at Taylor at first. It's definitely understandable that she would have been angry and more along the lines of questioning where Taylor went, assuming that maybe she was just off with someone else or ignoring Cassandra. But to come to the realization that no, something is actually wrong here, I can't imagine how that must have felt. And my other thing is, when you say people had heard from her but hadn't seen her, are you saying that people were maybe still receiving text messages from Taylor?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And do we know what these text messages said?
We do know some of them. We do not know all of them. And I will be reading a couple for you a little bit later. So at this point, police are finally launching their formal investigation into finding Taylor. Cassandra would be interviewed several times as she was seen as suspect number one, as the partner of the person missing, as well as the one to report her missing. And news stories were constantly running all over the Pensacola area to let people know they were looking for Taylor. And one of the things I found the most interesting is that Taylor had been missing for almost 15 days, and the police were still reporting that they didn't suspect foul play. Now, I don't know if they just said this to keep the community calm and, keep them from panicking or whatever, or they genuinely believed that somebody has just fallen off the face of the earth, hasn't spoken to her child or ex-husband in several weeks at this point, or any of her loved ones, and was just choosing to disappear for some reason.
Yeah, I feel like that's something you can say maybe in the first couple of days as you're still checking hospitals. You're maybe thinking there could have been a car accident or something else. But once it's been 15 days, I feel like you can say pretty safely that at least foul play is an option.
Absolutely. And this next part is even more fascinating because the public information officer, a man named Mike Wood, who also did an interview with the news, he stated that they had spoken to multiple family members and people that Taylor knew. And based on that investigation, that is why they believed that she left of her own accord. Now, it is my belief, based on my research, that police momentarily believed that Taylor took off to try to keep the $100,000 from her ex-husband. But it is my humble opinion that in the grand scheme of things, $100,000 is not disappearing and running away kind of money. Like, I don't know how far you would actually get on $100,000.
Especially if you would be flagged if you try to leave the country. And then I also think that her child is another factor here. There have been cases where people have dropped off the face of the earth even when they have children. It does sound like Taylor was an active and loving parent and wouldn't have just left her child like that.
Exactly. And in addition to $100,000, in my opinion, just not being enough money to run away from court proceedings for, Taylor's immediate family, as well as Cassandra, stated that she had never left and not told anybody where she was going, and that she would never leave and not have any communication with her child. And that even in other times where things were going bad in her life, she has never just dropped off the face of the earth. Not to mention the fact that all of her belongings, including her car, were still at Cassandra's house. So police are continuing to review all of Taylor's connections as, again, her family and Cassandra are adamant that something is very wrong here. And during an interrogation of Cassandra, She tells police that she hadn't seen Taylor since she was picked up from Cassandra's home on September 7th by a woman named Ashley MacArthur. So the police take note of this and they're like, well, okay, who the hell is Ashley MacArthur? Now, Ashley MacArthur was born in 1977 and she was born and raised in Florida. She worked for her family's business, Pensacola Automatic Amusement Incorporated, which was a company that owned jukeboxes, pool tables, and other games that you might see in a bar. But she wasn't only working at her family's business, as in 2001, she enrolled in school at the University of West Florida and earned a degree in forensic science and technology. And in 2006, she worked at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office as a crime scene technician. And though Ashley seemed to enjoy working at the sheriff's office, about 6 months into her career, she had to leave the sheriff's office as she had gotten into a pretty bad car accident and she was left with severe back pain as a result of the car accident. And according to her, she just wasn't able to walk around and bend over and investigate crime scenes like she was able to previously. So after leaving her career as a crime scene tech, she returned to work at her parents' business. But there is one thing she kept from the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, and that was a man named Zach MacArthur, who she met while she was working at the sheriff's office. And the couple would later get married in May of 2014. And this is important because it was actually through Zach that Ashley meets Taylor, because Zach had also left the sheriff's office and began working as a private investigator. And as we previously established, Taylor is a private investigator in Florida. So when their paths crossed, that led them to creating a friendship. And of course, Taylor would later meet Zach's wife, Ashley. And it has been said that from this point forward, the two were BFFs. So Ashley and Taylor knew each other for about a year right after she moved to Pensacola. And they were described as very close friends, thick as thieves even. And Ashley would help out Taylor any way she needed, and Taylor would help out Ashley any way she needed. So when Taylor withdrew the $100,000 from the shared bank account with Jeff, Taylor attempted to spread and hide the money to make it look like she didn't take it. So what she did is she filled out a series of cashier's checks and made several different transfers. And with these transfers, she gave Ashley MacArthur $34,000 to hide for her. And on top of that, Ashley even added Taylor to one of her bank accounts so that Taylor could hide even more money from Jeff. And finally, Ashley had several safety deposit boxes that she allowed Taylor to use in order to hide these cashier's checks and keep the money away from Jeff.
I definitely agree that this would make it hard to find the money, but I still feel like it would be pretty easy to figure out who originally took the money.
Thank you, ma'am.
Because with a joint bank account, you really only got 2 people to choose from.
You don't say, Cam. You don't say. And I'm not even going to lie to you. This part just pissed me off because I'm like, ma'am, you're a private investigator and you couldn't be more covert than this. Like, for real?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I expect better criminal activity from people who are former law enforcement. She's a former cop. I expect you to know better.
And I feel like that's a fair expectation.
Look, if you're going to crime well. This is why if you're not going to crime well, you shouldn't crime. So again, I don't really understand how Taylor thought she was going to get away with any of this. And this is also going back to my previous discussion of how there's a big difference between a detective and a cop, because I feel like Taylor should have known that she was not going to be able to hide this money from her ex-husband and that the money would have been easily tracked back to her. And I'm not exactly sure when or how, but what I do know is that the judge brings down that order and tells her, girl, I need all that money back in his bank account. And if I don't, I'm throwing that booty in jail. So after this order comes down from the judge, on several occasions, Taylor asked Ashley to go to the bank with her so that Taylor could get the money that she put in Ashley's accounts back into the joint bank account. And Ashley's always like, girl, I don't have time today. I'm very busy. I got stuff to do. The business is crazy. You know, I don't have time to go to the bank with you today. And that's actually a conversation they had on September 6th, 2017.
Maybe it's just me, but I would be like, girl, I'm facing jail time. If you don't have time, you got to make it.
Come on now. But Cam, you are a real friend. So, of course, you're going to actually be like, of course, girl, I got you. I'll find some time. But for multiple days, Taylor is asking every day, hey, girl, I really need to go to the bank. Girl, I need to go to the bank. At one point, she says to her, quote, they will throw my ass in jail, end quote. I need to go to the bank. And Ashley's just constantly like, oh, I don't have time today. We'll do it tomorrow. I don't have time today. We'll do it tomorrow. So because Ashley is not taking Taylor to the bank, because remember, all the accounts that Taylor's money is in Ashley's name. So she can't pull it out without her. So for this reason, she's unable to make sure all the money is in on September 7th because she's doing this runaround on September 6th, which is why the following day on September 7th, Taylor's attorney was able to ask the judge for an extension so that she could have more time to move the money. And that is how we get the date of September 12th for the next hearing. And the money needs to be in the bank account that day or Taylor's going to jail. And the judge grants this motion and allows extra time to move the money. So the following day, on September 8th, the plan is for Ashley to pick up Taylor from Cassandra's house and they would go to the bank together to move the money. And the following day, that is exactly what happens. Ashley comes and picks up Taylor. She and Cassandra see each other. They exchange pleasantries before they all part ways. Taylor and Ashley in one car, Cassandra in her car. And on this day, Cassandra is texting Taylor for most of the morning, and Taylor is expressing how she's so stressed out about this, that she really needs that money because the judge made it very clear that if that money's not back in the bank account by September 12th, then they're going to be holding her in contempt and that she would be going to jail. And Cassandra and Taylor were texting throughout most of the day until around 11:30 a.m. when Taylor stops replying to Cassandra's messages. And Cassandra actually reaches out several times after 11:30 a.m., but she never hears back from Taylor. So, of course, Cassandra is not getting answers from Taylor, so she calls Ashley because Cassandra knew that Ashley had taken Taylor to the bank. So Ashley answers the phone, and Cassandra's like, hey, girl, where is Taylor? Like, she's not answering my messages. It's just getting very weird. And Ashley tells Cassandra that, oh, like, instead of going to the bank, Taylor and I decided to go horseback riding just outside of Pensacola, and she is currently riding a horse right now at the farm. And she can't come to the phone right now because she's out horseback riding. And Cassandra's like, what do you mean you're out horseback riding? Weren't you going to the bank to move this money? Like, she was so stressed out about it. To which Ashley responds with, yeah, Taylor was very stressed out, but I just suggested that we go horseback riding so that Taylor could just relax a little bit and chill out a little bit.
It just really, the math is not mathing, because the source of Taylor's stress is the fact that y'all have not gone to the bank. So instead of curing the source of her stress, you say, you know what, girl, I know you stressed. Let's go horseback riding instead of going to the bank. That doesn't make any sense.
That does not make any sense at all. And Cassandra's like, okay, that's weird, but I guess that's all right. Whenever Taylor gets off of this horse, tell her to call me. And they get off the phone. But Cassandra is actively like, that's weird as hell. Everything that you just told me is weird as hell. And Ashley says that she will make sure that Taylor gives her a call after she gets off the horse and they hang up the phone. And a couple of hours go by and Cassandra still hasn't heard anything from Taylor. So Cassandra reaches out to Ashley again. And this time she's like, hey, where the hell is Taylor? And this time Ashley tells Cassandra that after horseback riding, Taylor and Ashley went back to Ashley's house to just kind of relax and chill out. And at around 5 p.m., Taylor said that she was thirsty and that she really wanted a drink. And she called an Uber, got in that Uber, and left. And again, Cassandra's kind of like, this is so weird because I thought that y'all were going to go handle her business so she didn't go to jail. And nothing about what you're saying sounds right. But again, Cassandra just takes what Ashley says and they get off of the phone.
My other thing is, why would she get in an Uber to go get a drink? Do we know if this was an alcoholic drink or she's just going to the gas station?
It is my understanding that this is an alcoholic drink, specifically a beer.
So she's just going to go get a beer. And here Ashley is with a car. And instead of taking your bestie to go get a beer in your car, your bestie orders an Uber?
Mm-hmm. Exactly, Cam.
Unless Ashley was already drunk or something, I don't really see why she would have ordered an Uber.
I don't either, friend. It's almost like it doesn't make any sense.
Right. This story is giving off all types of stenches because it is funky.
Oh, funky, funky, and stanky.
Does not pass the smell test at all.
And does it pass the smell test?
So yeah, you picked up on the fact that it's stanky. I picked up on the fact that it's stanky. And now Cassandra's like, okay, it is officially stanky. But shortly after this conversation with Ashley, Cassandra receives a text from Taylor. And that text says, quote, "I'll call you later. I'm not angry with you, and I should have called, but I just needed to think. I am trying to get my life organized and on track." End quote. Now, Cassandra sees this text and assumes that Taylor is breaking up with her and doesn't want to be with her anymore. And again, this just seems to be based on the context of how their relationship was in a little bit of a rocky place, granted due to Taylor's actions, but a rocky place nonetheless. And I understand why Cassandra was hypersensitive about this, given that Taylor had previously cheated on her. And when Cassandra responds to this text, asking for more clarifications, asking Taylor what she meant, she doesn't get an answer. And this is where Cassandra becomes angry at Taylor, believing that Taylor is leaving her without any explanation. And Cassandra actually said that she jumped to the conclusion that Taylor was going out to do drugs and potentially cheat on her again.
Yeah, and I feel like it would have been hard not to jump to that conclusion with what was going on in their relationship. And with this cryptic text from Taylor, I can definitely understand why that was the first thing that Cassandra jumped to.
Absolutely. So after this, on September 15th, 2017, Ashley was brought in for questioning by the sheriff's office, and she tells officers the same story that she told Cassandra. But in this interview, she added that Taylor had actually been drinking all day, but she doesn't seem to indicate that Taylor was significantly intoxicated by any means. Thus, that's why she took an Uber. She also explains to police that Taylor did talk to her about getting a safety deposit box to hide the money from Jeff, but she does not say if she actually got those safety deposit boxes for Taylor. And one of the last things the officers ask Ashley is if she harmed Taylor, to which Ashley responds, quote, "No, I didn't," end quote. And she goes on to tell officers that she doesn't even believe that Taylor has been harmed. In fact, she says, quote, "I think that Taylor is doing what Taylor does," end quote, which to me basically insinuates that Taylor is just running to try to hide the money.
Or running away from her problems in general.
That's another very good option.
And did Ashley bring up Taylor's drug usage at any point?
I did not watch this full interview. It would not surprise me if she did, as Ashley doesn't particularly strike me as the kind of person who wouldn't throw Taylor under the bus in this moment. So after this interview with Ashley, the police continue to go through their list of suspects. They look into Taylor's ex-husband, Jeff, but find that he has an alibi for the time that Taylor has been missing, and they do not suspect him of doing anything to Taylor. So next, the police circle back to Cassandra, as she's the next closest person to Taylor, and they go to Cassandra's house and they search through Taylor's belongings. And among Taylor's belongings, they find a cashier's check in Taylor's name for $19,000. And the police are like, that's weird. If she was running away of her own volition, why would she not take this money with her? Because a cashier's check, for our younger viewers, is essentially cash. So she essentially left $19,000 of cash in Cassandra's house when she was planning on running away. It doesn't make any sense. So now the police start looking into several properties around the area that are attached to Ashley, because the police finally put together that Ashley is the last person to have seen Taylor alive, even though Cassandra is the last person to have communicated with Taylor. But before the police go and talk to Ashley again, they decide to do a little bit of a deep dive into Ashley MacArthur. And here's what they find. The police found cell phone data from Ashley and Taylor's phones, and that data revealed that according to local cell phone towers, Ashley and Taylor's cell phones were pinging at a completely different farm than the one that Ashley told police they went to. One that's about 45 minutes west of where Ashley said they went. And not only was this farm 45 minutes away from where Ashley said they were, this farm was also owned by Ashley's family, and there are no horses at this farm. But now we're going to get into what the girlies really want with this episode, is the tea that the police found about Ashley MacArthur. Cam just picked up her glass. She is ready. So one of the more interesting things that police find out about Ashley is that allegedly Zach and Ashley had an open marriage, meaning that the couple were seeing other people while married to each other. And this is important because Ashley's family provided multiple jukeboxes and games for several local bars. And Ashley was doing business with one of these locations called the Sticks Billiard. And Ashley spent a lot of time there, both on and off the clock, as through this establishment, she would meet a man by the name of Brandon in August of 2016 when he opened the bar. At first, the two maintained a strict business relationship, as his business was buying and renting things from her parents' business. However, as time went on, Brandon and Ashley's relationship began to shift, as Ashley began paying for his business supplies. And then she started paying the bills for the business. And then she bought him a boat.
For the business?
She said a business expense, write it off on our taxes.
Right.
But of course, Cam, she couldn't stop at a boat. She couldn't do that. So she also got him a motorcycle. But a motorcycle really isn't enough either. So she also bought him 4 AR-15s and 4 revolvers, because obviously you can't have just one.
Exactly. You got to have your Monday AR-15, your Tuesday revolver, your Wednesday AR-15, and then your weekend ones, which got to be totally separate. Yeah, makes sense.
Of course. It's just how it goes. It's the natural order of things.
Mm-hmm.
And baby girl could not stop herself from tripping all over this man throughout the summer of 2017. And she was at his bar every single day. So, of course, the natural question is, where is Ashley getting all of this money to spoil her side piece?
That's a great question. Before you answer that, I'm also trying to figure out, how much did Zach know about this relationship? Because I do know that with open relationships, there's different levels of what's condoned and what's not. Sometimes it's like you can do what you need, but don't let it get serious. Sometimes it's like you can have another partner, whatever. And sometimes it's like everything goes. So do we know what Zach knew about all this?
In my humble opinion, Zach knew approximately jack. It is my humble opinion that this marriage was not actually open, and that Ashley said this marriage was open so that she could run around and do what she wanted. It is my opinion. I don't have anything to support that other than the fact that when Zach gets a call about what happens, he's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? He knows nothing.
Yep. And you do got to be careful with that. Sometimes people are in a one-sided open relationship.
Come on now. And look, just call it what it is. If you want to cheat in peace. Just be honest about it.
Right. So Zach didn't know anything. And I'm going to also assume that even though Ashley was spending all this money on her side piece, she wasn't spending it on her main man, was she?
Of course not. Of course not. You really think her main man was taken care of? Come on, Cam. You know they always spoil the side piece more than they spoil the main. That's how it goes. Always how it goes. So now that police have collected and sipped all the tea, they're like, okay, Ashley, come on in, girl. We need to talk to you. So a month later, on October 19th, 2017, Ashley was brought back into the police station for more questioning, and they confronted her with the information that I just provided for you. And at first, Ashley is completely calm during this interview because for some reason she thinks that she's getting one over on the police, I guess. But she doesn't know that while she's being interrogated by the police, they've already obtained a search warrant for the farm that Ashley and Taylor actually went to the day Taylor went missing. And again, during the interview, police present to her that we have your cell phone data that tells us you weren't where you said you were. Do you want to explain that? And she's just adamant. No, we were in Milton. That's where we were. We were in Milton. And they're like, the data says otherwise. You know, and we also saw that like these text messages that are coming from Taylor's phone are also still with your phone. So how did you get Taylor's phone? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. At one point, she even says she doesn't know how cell phone towers work.
Well, baby girl, you don't need to know how they work. We know how they work, and that's all that matters.
Come on now. Come on now. But I'm also like, baby girl, you allegedly were a crime scene tech, and you don't know anything about how... I'm sorry. You don't know anything about how cell phone towers work?
You're so right. I forgot she was a crime scene tech.
Exactly. So again, she's sitting in the interrogation lying through her teeth. Meanwhile, the other investigators are out at her farm, and it would be on this day that skeletal remains of Taylor Wright would be found in a shallow grave after she had been missing for almost 6 weeks. And after an autopsy was performed, it was determined that Taylor's cause of death was a single gunshot to the back of the head. And it would be this same day, October 19th, 2017, that Ashley MacArthur was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Taylor Wright.
I'm very glad that they were able to find Taylor's body because I know that for families, it can be really difficult. Even if you believe and know that the person you love has passed away, it's really difficult when you don't actually have a body to bury and you can't say for sure where they are. So I'm glad that they were able to find her body. And I am also just disgusted by Ashley's actions. Like, this is supposed to be your best friend. And if you had spent your best friend's divorce settlement money on your side piece, I think maybe worst case scenario, y'all might not have been friends anymore, especially if Taylor had to go to jail. But to take her life, you're supposed to be one of the people that knows her the most. And to take her life just shows how little you actually care about her. Because you know you're not only taking her life, you're taking away a daughter, you're taking away a partner, you're taking away a mother. You knew all that and still went through with it.
Exactly. And just to correct one thing, this wasn't her settlement money. She wasn't entitled to that money. And you knew she wasn't entitled to that money because she told you. You knew that she was hiding that money from that man. So not only are you spending money that's not yours, you're spending money that's not hers.
Yeah, you're very right.
Crazy. So Ashley MacArthur's murder trial was scheduled to begin in August of 2019, but Before she could go to trial on Taylor's murder, Ashley was actually tried and convicted of racketeering and organized fraud shortly before her murder trial. Apparently, she had been stealing money from several of the companies that rented games from her parents' business. And in one case, she had reportedly stolen $13,000 from one of the businesses who were renting out a jukebox from her parents' business. And hold on, girl, because you're making a face. It gets even worse, because not only did she steal this money, the prosecution also alleged that she set her business on fire to destroy the financial records to show that she had stolen this money. So she was also charged with arson, but I don't believe she was convicted of arson. But either way, the evidence is giving she set that place on fire to hide the money she stole.
Yeah, it's giving Taylor's money was not the only source for her side piece fund.
Exactly. So after this trial, where she was convicted of organized fraud and racketeering, she was sentenced to 84 months in state prison and 3 years of probation upon completion of her sentence. And remember, this happened shortly before the murder trial. So now that that little nugget is out of the way, let's get into Ashley MacArthur's murder trial, which started on August 26th of 2019. So according to the prosecution, Ashley was solely responsible for Taylor's death and did so in order to continue to steal money from her. The prosecution stated that Ashley never actually bought the safety deposit boxes that Taylor requested of her, but she told Taylor that she did. So Taylor would give Ashley all of the money to hide for her. And Ashley was putting it into her personal bank account before spending it on her side piece. And the prosecution also revealed that Ashley had already spent every dime that Taylor had given her long before Taylor asked for the money back in September.
How long did Ashley have this money?
She had had that money maybe 6 months.
So in less than 6 months, she spent more than $30,000?
Yep. Girl, boats and motorcycles are expensive.
That's very true. And I'm sure her side piece was very happy.
Oh, look, girlie, we're going to get into it in a little bit, but the side piece testifies in court.
Can't keep a man that don't want to be kept.
Come on now. Come on now. So the prosecution continued explaining how Ashley managed to steal all of Taylor's money. And that was because Ashley was forging Taylor's signature on her cashier's checks and on several other documents to get the money that Taylor was giving her. Because remember, Taylor was giving her cashier's checks to store in the safety deposit box. And those cashier's checks were made out to Taylor Wright, which means the only person who should have been able to cash them was Taylor Wright. And the prosecution explained that Ashley seemed to think that she was never going to face any repercussions for spending all of this money. That is until the judge in Taylor's case ordered that she return the money to the joint bank account with her ex-husband. And this is when Taylor begins to ask Ashley for the money back every single day for several days. And every single time, Taylor makes up excuses after excuses as to why she cannot take Taylor to the bank. And the prosecution would actually read in several of the text messages that Taylor sent to Ashley when she was freaking out about getting this money back. And instead of reading those text messages to you, I'm going to let the prosecution take over.
The text messages that you will see start August 29th of 2017. A message from Taylor to this defendant. She texted, "I need to get the keys to the safety deposit box. I've got to get this ring in there. I can't be running around with $50K in my bag." August 31st, text message from Taylor to this defendant. "If at all possible, can we go to the bank today? I've got to get this done. My account closed and my jewelry in the safety deposit box. Court is next week." On September 4th, a message from Taylor to this defendant. "I have to get to the bank tomorrow." On September 5th, a message from Taylor to this defendant. "Any idea on a time to go to the bank?" Again on September 5th, a message from Taylor to this defendant. "We only have 2 more hours to get to the bank. You almost ready?" September 5th, this defendant sent a text to Taylor, said, just called the bank. They closed at 4. We have to go in the morning. What time are you free? September 6th, Taylor again sent a message to this defendant. I have to get in that deposit box today and get those papers submitted by 4. I'm out of time. Again on September 6th, Taylor sent a message to this defendant. Ash, there is no way I will make it there and to the bank in 10 minutes. Again on September 6th, a message from Taylor to the defendant. They are going to hold me in contempt for not paying child support and not putting the $25K into the escrow account. On September 7th, Taylor sent a message to this defendant. I've got to get to the bank ASAP this morning and get into the box and deposit that money. A few minutes later, she sent another text to this defendant. I'm going to be held in contempt if I don't get that money in the escrow account. Again on September 7th, Taylor sent a message to this defendant. They could potentially put me in jail if I don't pay the child support like today. September 7th, text message from Taylor to the defendant. Please don't be late. They are going to put me in jail if I don't make that deposit today. Again on September 7th, Taylor sent a message to this defendant. They are going to check your ID in order to get into that box. So I need you to come with me. September 7th, around 2 p.m., Taylor sent a message to the defendant, said, waiting on you at my house. Bank closes at 4. This is way too important for me not to do today. I'm under a court order or my ass will get thrown in jail.
And I'm sure through all of this, there was something in the back of Taylor's mind telling her that something wasn't right. It wasn't just that Ashley was busy, but she probably trusted Ashley so much and believed in her that it didn't really cross her mind that Ashley doesn't have this money anymore.
I completely agree with you. I think she fully trusted Ashley. I think for several reasons. One being, Ashley's husband is a cop. There's no way that Ashley would do some foul stuff to me because her husband's a cop. She's a former crime scene tech, so she has to have some level of integrity. I think that helped out because I think that's the only reason I could think that you would give somebody $34K and you had really only known them a little over a year.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be 100% real with you. I got great friends out here that I have known and loved for about a year, and I wouldn't give any of them $34K. So I feel like the only thing that made Taylor that comfortable has to be that police presence and that idea of having integrity. But clearly Ashley didn't have any of that because not only was she stealing your money, she was stealing money from these companies that were working with her.
Right. And just to know that your best friend, your supposed best friend, is struggling, stressing out, knowing that you were the cause of this stress and not really doing anything about it and outright lying to her is wild. Also, as far as I know, banks always close at 5.
Come on now.
So, you know what? Maybe it was a special day for that bank or something, but I am taking everything Ashley says with a grain of salt.
Absolutely. You're being really generous with the grain. I was hoping more of a pound of salt.
Mm-hmm.
So after reading all of those text messages to the jury, the prosecution argues that this stress of Taylor asking Ashley for the money over and over and over again, the money that Ashley had already stolen, is what led Ashley to decide that she was going to kill Taylor. And the prosecution also provided evidence that Ashley shooting Taylor was actually the second attempt Ashley made on Taylor's life. The first attempt reportedly happened when Ashley attempted to give Taylor a beer that was laced with a deadly amount of cocaine. And luckily, Taylor spit it out because she said the beer tasted sour or it was off in some way, and she survived this first attempt. Now, if you're wondering, why would Ashley try to make Taylor overdose on cocaine? Well, if you remember, Taylor, for reasons that we do not know, started using cocaine. And a witness in the trial actually tells the jury that they heard Ashley say that if Taylor overdosed on cocaine, nobody would question it because she was doing cocaine anyway.
And again, this is supposed to be her best friend.
Exactly. Your best friend that is aware of your struggle with cocaine and is like, oh, perfect. This is going to be the exact way I take her out. That's crazy. So the failure of this first attempt on Taylor's life, according to the prosecution, is what led Ashley to adjust her strategy for her second attempt on Taylor's life. Thus, Ashley formulated a more thorough plan. And in this plan, Ashley went to pick up Taylor under the guise that she was finally going to take Taylor to the bank. And she instead took her to the property that her family owned. And Ashley knew that nobody would be on the property that day because her family that lived there would be attending a funeral. And it is believed that under duress, Ashley drove Taylor to this farm before shooting her in the back of the head. She then wrapped Taylor's body in a hammock and buried her in a shallow grave in an abandoned part of the farm. She then attempted to use her skills as a former crime scene tech to cover her tracks and leave as little evidence as possible. She would later go on to give the murder weapon to Brandon, who would later sell it. And this is why I think Brandon sang like a canary at her trial, because the prosecution came in and said, hey, bro, we will charge you with aiding and abetting if you just don't tell us everything you know.
And ain't no that good.
Come on now. Look, he said the boat was already purchased. I don't owe her nothing.
Exactly.
So the following day, after Ashley had killed Taylor, she went to Home Depot and purchased cement and soil to aid in burying Taylor's body. And this concrete and soil would later be found with Taylor's body. And for the next couple of days, she would send multiple text messages from Taylor's phone to make it seem like she was still alive, including the text message that Cassandra receives from Taylor's phone stating that she needed space. And to even add to the story, Ashley was also texting herself from Taylor's phone to make it seem like they had an ongoing dialogue. But again, I guess Ashley never learned anything about cell phones during her training as a crime scene tech, because police are able to see exactly where the text messages are coming from. And they're originating from Ashley's house, not Taylor's house or some random bar that she claimed that she went to the day she went missing. So, of course, the prosecution has laid out their case as to why they believe Ashley committed this murder. Now it's time to hear from the defense. And the defense in this case says that, yes, Ashley lied to the police. And yes, Ashley may have had motive to kill Taylor because, yes, Ashley did steal all of Taylor's money. And yes, maybe she was cheating on her husband, or maybe they had an open relationship and you just may not like her lifestyle, but that doesn't make her a murderer. And the police don't have any eyewitnesses of the crime. And the police don't have any physical evidence that Ashley killed Taylor. The entire case that the prosecution has laid out for you is based on circumstantial evidence. They go on to say that even after the prosecution presents their case, you will have strong, reasonable doubt. And because of that reasonable doubt, they are going to ask you to find Ashley not guilty. They also tried to argue that Ashley's back injury from a car accident that she had in 2006, almost 13 years before the trial, would have prevented her from being able to move Taylor's body. And the defense also tried to argue that the type of cement that Ashley bought from Home Depot was different than the cement found at the crime scene. They tried to say that the cement that Ashley bought from Home Depot was soft and sandy in texture, and that the cement found at the crime scene was rocky and hard, which would lead them to my favorite line of the entire trial, which is,
if the concrete that she purchased isn't the concrete there, they don't have a concrete case.
They can't be serious.
you know they are completely serious, friend. He thought he ate so hard with that one.
You know he stayed up late at night to figure out that line.
He said, I'm going to eat them up with this one. I got it. He really tried to have his if the gloves don't fit, you must have quit moment. He really tried. He really tried. But like, I think most people know that if you add water to the powdery cement that you buy from Home Depot, it kind of like sets and becomes hard and rocky. I think, you know, I've poured a bit of cement in my day, and I'm 100% sure that's how that works.
Maybe.
And, you know, we can't possibly factor into the fact that this is Pensacola, Florida, where it rains basically every single day of summer, and especially would have rained in this time because this is prime hurricane season. September to October, that's hurricane season. I know it rained at least once a day at 4 o'clock. As somebody who lives in Florida, that is what happens here. So you don't think the texture of the powdery cement would change? Got it. And with that, the case is handed back to the jury. And when the jury returned with a verdict, they found Ashley MacArthur guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. And on that same day, she was sentenced to life in prison with a mandatory minimum 25 years of state prison. And as I finish the story, I want to finish it talking about Taylor, who was described as such a lovely, wonderful person, mother, girlfriend, and didn't deserve to leave this earth the way she did. Over $34,000. Her girlfriend, Cassandra, would go on to do a long-form interview with Law and Crime to talk about Taylor's memory as well as their experience of looking for Taylor. And I'll be sure to leave a link to that interview as well as the entire trial, which is available on YouTube. And that's the end of our story, Fred.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, you know, I know we joked a little bit about the merit of trying to hide $100,000 from a court, but regardless of what Taylor did, nothing warranted her death. That should have been fought out in the courts, and Taylor was ready to return the money. But she put her trust in the wrong person. And that's not her fault, because you should expect that someone you call your best friend has your best interest in mind. I know that if I, for some reason, needed to hide $100,000, I could trust Dev to help me hide that money. And I could also trust her to give that money back when I need it.
Exactly. And you can also trust me to tell you that, girl, why are you trying to hide $100,000? Why are you trying to pretend? Again, Devin fears all 3-letter agencies. Cam's such a good friend that she would never put me in that predicament.
And that's actually the difference between a good friend and a best friend, because a good friend will do it for you. A best friend will do it for you. But first, they're going to tell you that you don't need to do this.
Come on now.
But with all that being said, Ashley really showed her whole behind, because she showed that she was a greedy, selfish person who was willing to throw anybody under the bus if it meant saving her own butt.
Absolutely. And like, not only that, I'm so sorry. But at the end of the day, in this case, you killed your alleged best friend over $34,000 and a man. You threw away your parents' business over a man. On top of you being a thieving, terrible person. But what really comes down to a man? Are you for real?
And a man that didn't even stick beside you.
Come on now, because he sang like a canary the first time the police knocked on his door, which I'm not faulting him for.
Right.
Protect yourself. You don't owe her nothing. She did all of that of her own volition. That ain't got nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it were me, if a man blew $35,000 and stole this money on my behalf, if you think I'm not singing like a canary, you are wrong. Me. Like, do re mi fa sol la ti do. Okay.
So as we wrap up today's discussion, we're going to move into our segment called Today in Crime, where we'll describe a crime or crime-related event that took place on this day. So on November 15th, 1923, James Montgomery was accused of sexual assault, which would be the beginning of his struggle for justice. On November 15th, 1923, Mamie Snow, a mentally disabled white woman from Waukegan, Illinois, claims that James Montgomery, a Black veteran and factory worker, sexually assaulted her. James, who was promptly thrown in jail, spent more than 25 years in prison before his conviction was overturned and he was released. From the beginning, James's trial seemed ill-fated. Local Ku Klux Klan members threatened Montgomery's lawyer during the proceedings, and in 1923, after a weak defense and a trial that took less than a day, James Montgomery was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. While serving time, James studied the law in an attempt to prove his innocence, and in 1946, he convinced civil rights attorney Lewis Kuttner to investigate his case. Kuttner discovered a medical report from Mamie Snow's hospital stay revealing that not only was Mamie never sexually assaulted, she was likely a virgin. Kuttner also located additional evidence suggesting that the Klan had framed James Montgomery and that prosecutors had withheld the medical evidence from the defense. Nonetheless, it took Kuttner 3 more years to have the unjust conviction overturned, and James Montgomery was finally released in August of 1949. And that is what happened on this day, November 15th. If you found this story interesting, leave a scales of justice emoji in the comments. And I feel like that story is just one of the many examples of sexual assault being weaponized by specifically white women against Black men. And it really makes it difficult to have formative conversations about the true cases of sexual assault that occur regardless of race. Because I feel like anytime you bring up a sexual assault case, especially when it's against a Black man, there's always that, oh, well, you know, they could just be lying. And even though that's such a small percentage of the cases, it still gets brought up even to this day.
You're absolutely right. It is very unfortunate that in society, a lot of times we don't believe women initially. And what's worse is when we as a society do believe women and then it is revealed that they were lying the entire time. And like you said, it's important to have formative conversations and productive conversations around this. And what I have told people is how I approach this subject is trust but verify. If somebody comes to me with a story and they tell me something happened, I'm going to believe them. I'm going to believe them until I am given a reason not to believe them about that case specifically. Because just because somebody lied about something else doesn't mean they're lying about this. And it is unfortunate that so many Black men have been convicted and had their entire lives ruined over accusations of sexual assault, specifically from white women. And what I hate is all of it. Because when a white woman says that a Black man assaulted her, he's thrown in jail immediately. And the white woman is viewed as the victim. But if a Black woman comes forward and says that a Black man assaulted her, she is villainized and she's asked for more explanations and nothing happens to the Black man. A full investigation wants to happen then. Why not? And I'm not saying that you should just throw people in jail immediately. I'm saying you should do your job and investigate everybody equally. So everybody gets a fair shake at what happens. And especially when you as the prosecution go out of your way to withhold evidence, which is the number one thing you cannot do in our society. The prosecution cannot hide evidence from the defense, because if you've been following the Alec Baldwin case at all, you know that's exactly how he just got off on his charges, is because the prosecution withheld evidence, despite the prosecution claiming to this day that they never withheld said evidence. But either way. So it just adds that extra layer of Black men are never treated fairly in a system, even when they have proof. This man got his life ruined. His attorneys were threatened. Everything was stacked up against this man and he didn't even do anything. And I hate it. I just hate it. I want more justice. I want fairness. I want equity. I want people to believe victims. I want victims to be honest. And I want people to be thoroughly investigated when things happen. That is what I want. And I hate this case. And that's all I got, friend. Any other thoughts, friend?
Nope, that's all I got.
Thank you to our listeners for joining us on today's episode. I'd also like to thank Law and Crime and Mike from that chapter for providing most of the material for this episode. If you'd like to check out photos related to this case, Be sure to follow us at Criminalish Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Listeners, if you like what you hear, be sure to tell a friend and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to the Criminalish Podcast. And if you are listening on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel and feel free to leave any comments or questions. As always, stay nosy, my friends. Bye.